This is the review for the Chapter 6 test. When you take a look at question number 1. Now, when you take a look at these questions, you have multiple different ways that you could solve these. First of all, take a look at the directions. For questions 1 and 2, you have to solve and check. You don't have to check for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Only for 1 and 2 do you have to solve and check the following systems algebraically. You have your choice on some of these, how you want to solve them. When we take a look at question number 1, you have your system of equations. You could technically, if you wanted to, and I wouldn't do it this way, but some people might want to, could you see how you have this y that's all by itself? There's not a number in front of it like a 2 or a 3 or something like that. You could, if you wanted to, rearrange that equation for y equals. Once you get what y equals, then you could sub it in for y if you wanted to. I wouldn't do that question that way, but could you do it that way if you wanted to? Sure. Could you choose to rearrange both of them for y equals and then set the two things equal to each other? Sure. I wouldn't do this one that way. What I would do in this one is try and create my own opposites. You have a 2x and a 5x. Does 2 go into 5 evenly? No. So I wouldn't use the x's. You have a negative 1y here, and you have a 3y. Does 1 go into 3 evenly? Yes. I would try and multiply to create opposites with my y's. You have a 3y. What's the opposite of 3y? Negative 3y. To get a negative 3y down here, I would have to multiply that bottom equation by 3. That way I'm creating a 3y and a negative 3y. Don't forget, you need to distribute, distribute, distribute. Again, the single biggest mistake that people make is forgetting to distribute that third time. Go ahead and find both x and y and do the checks, please. If you get stuck, or if you just want to make sure that you're doing it right, the answer is up on the board. We'll talk about it. So taking a look at this one, you should have gotten x equals 3 and y equals 2. I multiplied by 3 to create my own opposites of 3 and negative 3. Make sure that you distribute all 3 times. So I have my opposites, I add going down, and then I solve that one-step equation by dividing by 17 and 17. I chose to sub it back into that top equation. You might have completely different work if you did it into the bottom equation, but you should still get an answer of 2. Then you have to do your 2 checks. The people in my other algebra class today asked me, do you have to do 1 check or 2 checks? You have to sub it into both equations for your check. So subbing in a 2 and a 3, subbing in a 2 and a 3, you get 12 equals 12 and 13 equals 13. Questions on number 1. Take a look at question number 2. Now, in question number 2, again, you have your choice what method you want to use. There are some people that will look at this and they'll go, oh, there's already one y equals. This y is positive and not with a number in front of it. I could just go through, don't write this down, but I could go through and do plus 2x and plus 2x and get y equals 2x minus 20. And then I have my y equals and my y equals, and I could just set those equal to each other. Could you do it that way? Sure, you could. Nothing wrong with that. Or a totally different way that you could do it, which is probably the way that I would do it, is you already have one y all by itself. You have negative 2x plus 48. I would just go through and sub it in for y, so that I have negative 2x plus this whole thing. Now you have to be careful. If we had like a 2 in front of this y, it would be 2 times that whole thing. But we don't have a number in front of the y this time, so it's just plus negative 2x plus 48 equals negative 20. I'm just taking and subbing in this part in for y. That's all that I'm doing. Go ahead and solve the rest of this one, please. Find both x and y, and you have to do the 2 checks. The answer is up on the board if you got stuck or if you just want to check and make sure that you're doing it correctly. I should say that if you do it a different way, like that, rearranging for the y equals and then set the 2 things equal to each other, you will end up with the same answers in the end. Your checks will look the same, but all of your work will be different. So at the beginning of this problem, I have negative 2x's on the same side of the equal sign. So I want to add together my like terms because they're on the same side of the equal sign. So I get negative 4x. Then it's just a 2-step equation. Subtract by 48, divide by negative 4, you get 17. I chose that top equation to sub it into. You could choose the bottom, but I think the top is easier. You get y equals 14. Then you do your 2 checks. Questions on number 2? All right, take a look at question number 3. In question number 3, Awesome Taxi Cab Company charges riders 19 cents per mile plus a flat fee of $2.60. Better Taxi Cab Company charges riders 14 cents a mile plus a fee of $4.10. After how many miles will the cost for both companies be the same? What does that mean when they are being the same? This is the break-even point. This is what we want to know. When are they equal to each other? So the first thing that we need to do is set up the two equations. Awesome Taxi Cab Company charges 19 cents a mile. So 19 cents times the number of miles plus a fee of $2.60. So whether you go 1 mile or whether you go 100 miles, you get that $2.60 fee. Better Taxi Cab Company charges 14 cents a mile. So 14 cents times the number of miles plus $4.10. What do you notice with these two equations? They both have y equals. What I would do to solve this, we want to know when they're equal to each other, what the break-even point is. So just take what I put in these two blue boxes and set those two things equal to each other and solve. When you start to solve this equation, you're going to notice that you have x's on one side and an x on the other side. Do not add together your like terms. We have an x on one side and an x on the other. When we have x's on different sides of the equal sign, I would work with the smaller of the two letters first and subtract by 0.14x on both sides first. We can't add them together like terms because they're on different sides of the equal sign. Go ahead and do number 3. Don't have to do a check for this one. So we just want to know when they'll be the same. What is the break-even point? Subtract 0.14x from both sides. You just end up with a two-step equation. So subtract by 260, divide by 0.05, and you get an answer of 30 miles. So after 30 miles, they'll cost the same. Questions on number 3? I think on your quiz tomorrow, question number 4 is the most difficult question for most people. Sarah's Sub Shop is making a total of 250 pre-made sandwiches. The two different kinds of sandwiches being made are ham and turkey. Right away, just from those two sentences, you have your first equation. First of all, what two letters are we going to use? H and T. H equals ham. Notice that this part says define your variables. H equals ham and T equals turkey. I would not use a lowercase t because it would look like a plus sign for some people. So right away from those first two sentences, we know the first equation. We have two different kinds of sandwiches. We have ham and turkey. If you take your total number of ham sandwiches and your total number of turkey sandwiches, how many total sandwiches are there? 250. So ham plus turkey equals 250. Now we're going to set up our other equation. So far, they've made 1/10 of ham and 2/3 of the turkey, which is equal to 110 sandwiches. 1/10 of the ham, 1/10 H, and 2/3 of the turkey, 2/3 T, equals 110. How many of each sandwich are they making? Now, could you change your fractions into decimals? Sure. Top divided by bottom, 1 divided by 10 is 0.1, 2 divided by 3 is 0.6 repeating. Don't accidentally use 0.6, it's really 0.666666666. If you use 0.6, you'll get the wrong answer. All right, so be careful if you do it that way. I would, however, try and multiply to get rid of the fraction. To get rid of the fraction, we're looking for the least common denominator. The lowest number when counting by threes and counting by tens. We start counting by threes, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. If we start counting by tens, 10, 20, 30, ding, 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 the lowest common denominator or least common denominator is 30. That's what we want to multiply to get rid of both of those fractions. Now, be careful when you distribute. We still have our original question. We still have h plus t equals 250. But now we have to distribute. 30 times 1/10 is 3h. 30 times 2/3 t is 20t. 30 times 110 is 3,300. There's our system that we need to solve now. What number is really in front of that h? A 1. I'm going to create opposites with my h's because I think that's the easiest way to do it. I'd rather work with 3 and -3 instead of 20 and -20. So I'm going to multiply this top equation by -3. Distribute. I multiplied by the 30 originally just to get rid of the fractions. Now I'm creating my own opposites by multiplying the top by -3. Go ahead and solve the rest of this one on your own. You do not have to check it. If you solve the rest of this one correctly, we made opposites with the h's, so distribute. So we have a -3 and a +3. Add going down, those will cancel out. We end up with 17t equals 2,550. Divide by 17s, you get t equals 150. So there are 150 turkey sandwiches. I think the top equation is way easier to sub into. So I took my t and I subbed it, or my 150 in for my t. H plus 150 equals 250. You get that h equals 100. Questions on number 4. All right, turn the page, take a look at question number 5. Now, in question number 5, it says Joe and Mark are plumbers. Joe charges $25 an hour for labor plus a $10 house call fee. Mark charges $20 per hour for labor plus a $50 house call fee. Write and graph a system of linear equations that represents this situation. Determine the number of hours at which both plumbers will charge the same amount. What is that same amount called? The break-even point. So notice the little star here. It says you may choose to solve algebraically or graphically. You have your choice. Personally, I think it's easier to do this algebraically. But could you do it graphically? Yes, you have your choice. So the first thing that we need to do, no matter what, is we have to write the function for both of them. No matter which way you do it, you got to write the functions, because if you do it graphically, you need to know what to type into your y equals. Joe charges $25 an hour plus $10 fee. So Joe is y equals 25x, $25 times the number of hours, plus a $10 fee. Mark charges $20 an hour plus a $50 fee. 20 times x plus 50. Those are two functions for Joe and Mark. If you're looking for the break-even point, what would you do with these two equations? Set them equal to each other. You have 25x plus 10 and 20x plus 50. I think the easier way to do this question is to set those two things equal to each other and solve. Go ahead and solve that equation, please. If you solve that equation correctly, you should get x equals 8. All right, subtract 20x from both sides because they're on different sides of the equal sign, then it's just a two-step equation. That's one way to do it. If you showed just this, you're good to go. Now, instead of setting up an equation and solving it, we could do it graphically as well. Type both of those equations into your y equals, right? We can type it into our y equals and our y equals, hit second and table, and find the points. If we want to go graphic for Joe would start off down here. You just sort of have to estimate the points. All right, they're not going to be perfect, but you have to estimate. Notice that we're counting by 2s along the bottom. All right, so make sure that you're looking at the right thing in the table. So Joe's points would look like this. So Joe's equation, Joe's line would look like this. For Mark would look like this when we go to find the points. Mark starts off at 50. And then we have here. So Mark goes like this. Notice that they cross right here. Where is that at where they cross? Well, it goes straight down from there, and they are crossing at exactly 8. All right. So you could just graph it like this and write 8 in your answer block box as well. You know for sure that they're crossing at 8 because when you look at your table, they're both going to say 8. All right. 8 is 200 and whatever it happens to be. Right? 210. That's where it would be at. Questions on number 5. On your test tomorrow, do you have to do it both ways? No, you have your choice. Take a look at question number 6. In question number 6, again, you have your choice how you want to do this. You could graph it by hand, or you could use the calculator to help you out. First of all, you have two different equations here. Here's your first one. Y equals 2/3 x minus 4. If you go to graph it by hand, your slope is 2/3. That really means up 2 over 3. Your y-intercept is 0, -4. Or if you didn't want to do it that way, you could type this into your y equals, hit second in table, and it'll tell you what points to graph. If we go and do it by hand, starting off at -4, you're going up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3. When you go to graph it, make sure that you have arrows on the ends of your lines and that you label your line. For the second one is not in the correct form. No matter whether you choose to do it by hand or by typing it into y equals and hitting second table, you still have to rearrange for y equals. We need to get the y all by itself. To get the y all by itself, we have to subtract by 3x and 3x. Now we have the 3y all by itself. Remember, 18 minus 3x is not 15x. You can't subtract a plain number and an x, but we could rearrange them to be in that y equals mx plus b form. So that could be switched around to be -3x plus 18. We want to get the y all by itself, so we want to divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. We end up with y equals -1x plus 6. You could then go and type that into your y equals, hit second in table to get your points. Or your slope would be -1 over 1, which would be down 1 over 1. And our y-intercept would be 0, 6. 0, 6 is right here. Starting from there, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, until we cross that other line. Make sure that you put your arrows on the ends of your line and that you label your line. Then you're asked finally for the solution. The solution is where the two lines cross. Where do they cross? Is it 0, 6 or 6, 0? 6, 0. Remember, when you write points, points are always written x, y. Your x value is how many you go over. Your y value is how many you go up or down. So when we take a look at that point, we're going over to 6 on the x, up 0 on the y. Be very careful. That's a very common mistake tomorrow. In question number 7, this starts your multiple choice questions tomorrow. Company S and Company Z charge differently for tech support phone calls. Company S charges a flat fee of $5 plus $1.50 a minute. Company Z charges a flat fee of $15 plus 50 cents per minute. What does the solution x equals 10 represent? First of all, remember this is your x-axis. So x equals 10, we're talking about this point right here. So over to 10, up to what? What does that x equals 10 represent? How much are they being charged at 10 minutes? $20. And what do you notice about both S and Z? They cross there, which is when they are equal to each other. In this case, we wouldn't say break even. It's just where they're equal to each other, right? So at 10 minutes, that both companies charge $20. They are equal to each other, right? They're equal to each other. So they both charge the same amount at 10 minutes exactly. This will be a multiple choice question tomorrow. You just have to choose the most appropriate answer. Take a look at question number 8. If you like working with decimals, are these decimals pretty easy to work with? Yes. You have a positive 0.4 and a positive 0.4. What's the opposite of 0.4? Negative 0.4. You could, if you wanted to, choose to multiply the top equation by -1 to make opposites. You could, if you wanted to, choose to multiply the bottom equation by -1 to make opposites. If you want to get rid of the decimals altogether, what would you have to multiply by since they all have one decimal place? Tens. Distribute, 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 distribute. So this is going to change when we distribute into 3x plus 4y equals 18 and negative 2x plus 4y equals 8. That's what it's going to change into when we multiply by tens to get rid of the decimal. Now we have a 4 and a 4. The opposite of 4 is -4. So 4 and -4. To get rid of that, to make those opposites, I'm going to multiply that bottom equation by -1. Distribute, distribute, distribute. Go ahead and solve the rest of this one on your own, please. You don't have to do the check. So when you multiply those out and add going down, 4 and -4 cancel out. You get a one-step equation, x equals 2, sub it back in, y equals 3. Remember, this will be multiple choice tomorrow. Take a look at the last one. How many solutions? Remember, we either have one solution where you have like x equals 2 and y equals 3. No solutions are when we get different numbers like -1 equals 1. Infinite solutions is when you get the same number, like 3 equals 3 or 0 equals 0. So this will be multiple choice. What are you going to do with these two since they're y equals and y equals? Set them equal to each other. All right, just set them equal to each other. 6 minus 6x equals -3 times 2x minus 2. Just set them equal to each other and solve. Distribute, distribute. So on this side, we have -6x plus 6. On this side, we have 6 minus 6x. Get all of your x's onto one side. So plus 6x plus 6x. Those cancel out. Those cancel out. We're left with 6 equals 6. Those are the same on both sides. So it is infinite solutions. Don't leave.